Okay, I think we are live. Welcome everyone to the weekly crypto recap show. We go over all of the latest news in crypto to keep you up to date with all of the cool things that are happening. Let me just shut that down. I'm like talking to myself through my YouTube page. Welcome everyone who's tuning in live. It's awesome to see so many of you hanging out here already. It's pretty cool. We have some awesome things to cover this week. Pretty exciting things happened over the last 7 days. Welcome to the show, Chris Karabats, aka Zaphoid from Smartcash.
Hey Naomi, always happy to be here. It's a beautiful Friday and always fun to chat the day after Trump mentions Bitcoin.
It is indeed. It is always nice to find out what the Donald has said about Bitcoin. It's been a pretty eventful few days in the Twitter sphere in particular. I hope everyone has their tea ready so that we can decompress and go over everything. Let's start with Trump, seeing as you brought him up. He says, he tweets yesterday evening, "I am not a fan of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies which are not money and whose value is highly volatile and based on thin air." We'll go back to that statement, Chris, because I know that you probably have a lot to say to that. Then he goes on to say, "Unregulated crypto assets can facilitate unlawful behavior." Like a US dollar. Anyway, including drug trade and other illegal activities. Similarly, then he moves on to Libra. So this is interesting as well. And it's my understanding that Libra prompted all of this because Bitcoin's been around for forever. Trump's ignored it for forever, but Libra comes around. Suddenly they're getting letters from politicians. Every government official around the world is writing them saying you must cease immediately. Jerome Powell's talking about it. We'll talk about that in a second. But, you know, it just kind of came out of nowhere. And then the president of the United States starts talking about it. So then he says, similarly, Facebook Libra as a virtual currency will have little standing or dependability. If Facebook and other companies want to become a bank, they must seek a new banking charter and become subject to all banking regulations, just like other banks, both national and international. I'm not sure why Donald Trump speaks like this either. I should be like we only have one real currency. This is a terrible Trump impression. In the USA, I'm not even gonna try. It's stronger. No,
what are you even trying to do?
I don't know. Like, I want to get that. Like, oh, we got all the best people. It's the greatest. It's stronger than ever. Both dependable and reliable. It's by far the most dominant currency anywhere in the world. It will always stay that way. It's called the United States dollar. That's the best I could do. I'm really sorry, guys. If you came here to see a realistic Trump impression, this is not the channel for you. But that's what he's basically saying. Chris, let's unpack all of this and give our take on what's going on here. Do you want to start?
Well, it's interesting on a few levels. One, I do agree with you. It probably is more driven by the whole Libra thing, and keep in mind that yesterday Trump did have his social media powwow thing with a bunch of interesting characters from YouTube and whatnot, and nobody from Twitter or Facebook was there. So I thought that was interesting. Though, of course, the Minds guy was there, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
So, this whole, Libra is not exactly, rather, Facebook is not exactly popular in the White House right now. And that may be somewhat related to why he's jumping on Libra. I thought it was interesting that Trump said Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, where anybody else in DC just says Bitcoin. So he's at least aware of some nuances there, which
well, what do you think about what everyone's saying about, well, Trump didn't even write that. It doesn't sound like him. I'm not sure. Listen to this final paragraph again and tell me that this doesn't sound like Donald Trump.
I mean,
stronger than ever. It's by far the most dominant currency. It'll always stay that way. Like, I mean, that's kind of Trump, classic Trump hyperbole right there.
Well, it is, but at the same time, this is very much the thought that is going around DC. This is the approved opinion, and Trump is echoing the approved opinion, which to me kind of talks about the strength and influence of the people behind this approved opinion.
Right.
Which Trump isn't normally echoing anybody else's ideas. I mean, you look through Trump's Twitter feed, and he's the first person to say whatever batshit crazy thing he says at that time.
Usually at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. And this is, something, 8:15 p.m. Eastern time. This was, later in the day. This is not necessarily even his peak tweeting time. Usually he's watching Fox now, I guess, or getting McDonald's or whatever it is he does. And
whatever it is it does. Yeah, McDonald's.
So there might be some truth to what they're saying. Now, the last paragraph could be Trump trying to make it sound like himself, or somebody trying to make it sound like Trump.
They did a more convincing impression than I just did. I'll give them that.
Yes, there is that.
One thing that I will say is that, consistently in campaign season, you have Wall Street, you have banks just giving a tremendous amount of money to presidential candidates, both on the left and the right. So this is like a bipartisan thing that is going on. Bipartisan, nonpartisan. Well, he doesn't care which side. That's what I'm trying to say.
Greed and corruption is nonpartisan.
Exactly. So I feel like right now, the reason that the banks give the presidential candidates so much money is because they want to be able to have their ear. They want to be able to leverage that. It's just, we've known for a long time that the White House is completely in bed, and the government is completely in bed with the banking system. TARP bailouts meant that the government even came in and began to own part of all the banks. So it's like this very incestuous relationship. So the facts that, like we've been saying over and over on this show, Libra is not a challenge to Bitcoin. Libra is a challenge to the banks. So the fact that now Trump is coming out and saying Libra, it has little understanding, little dependability. You want to know what has dependability? This other fiat currency over here that all these banks are issuing, the Federal Reserve is issuing, that you can get at your reliable places that have banking charters. It just seems like it is a cry out on behalf of the people who do have his ear, and it makes me. Caitlin Long, she said that. She was very good in her response. Like, she's always very good when she was saying, and I can read out her tweets later, but in essence, she was just saying the people around you are misleading you. This is not what's happening. Look at Wyoming. We have, a legal structure, a legal framework. Everything's working well. We're a state that's embracing cryptocurrency. The United States needs to do the same, because otherwise we'll be left behind. And, Caitlin, she's so diplomatic in the way that she's kind of pushing it off on the advisors. The people around you are misleading you. You've been given the wrong information and all of that. And that's because people, and Caitlin also identified, I don't see anyone in your advisors that has had experience with this new asset class. I don't have anyone who has a background in Bitcoin. So the fact that he's getting this one-sided point of view from people, I think is problematic. And I think that that's what Caitlin was alluding to, that maybe we need to change this. This is a common theme that's been coming up recently. Snowden said we need lobbyists advocating on behalf of cryptocurrency, because they are going to make regulation. Regulation can make it a lot more difficult for cryptocurrencies, for blockchain tech, for Bitcoin. If you're not advocating on behalf of this tech, then no one is. So we actually do need people out there. So that's really what I think Caitlin is getting at too. And it really does seem to, like, there's this drive towards getting the ear of people in power. And I know a lot of people will kind of dismiss and say, we shouldn't need to. This is outside of government control, la, la, la. But the reality of the situation is that, as I said, regulation could really damage, like bad regulation could really damage cryptocurrency. We don't want that to happen. Like, we don't want to make the battle harder than it already is. So let's do all the things, possible by educating people in power, reaching out to them, telling your local people in office why this is important, why they should be fighting on behalf of good regulation, etc.
Absolutely. This is the issue of our era right now. Who is going to control our money? And I'm a firm believer that in the long term we will win, but there could be a lot of pain in the short term as the banking system is flailing around in its death throes. That was pretty dramatic, but whatever.
Flailing around in its death throes. You heard it first here on NBTV.
But if you look at how Trump's been talking lately, trying to, make the Fed lower interest rates and whatnot. That is what Wall Street wants. That is what the banks want, because they can get richer and richer off the teat of the Federal Reserve. The lower the interest rate, the better it is for those who invest in the stock market, the more money those at the top get. So he is certainly reversing the Fed's manipulating the rate down. And yes, it's very self-interested on his behalf, but at the same time, he is towing the banker's line, he's towing Wall Street's line right now. And this is more of the same. And yeah, Wall Street and the bankers are terrified of Libra and Facebook coin because, you know, with the user base Facebook has, if they're successful in this, they will immediately be larger than any other bank out there, which is hilarious to think of. But, you know, this is terrifying for them. They are losing their control. And no, we're not a huge fan of Facebook and the privacy threat that Libra is. But I do like seeing them make the banks scared and making the government scared. So it's a positive in general. And I don't think, as we said earlier, that it really competes with Bitcoin because it isn't permissionless, it isn't borderless, it isn't censorship resistant, it isn't any of the things Bitcoin or real cryptocurrencies are. But it is better than what the banks offer.
It is indeed, and we've talked about some of the perks that something like Libra coin would have. Like, first of all, they're re-envisioning money and they're re-envisioning financial structure. The idea of cryptocurrency is to completely overhaul the traditional financial system. It's archaic, it's bureaucratic, it hasn't been innovated in 50 years, as Caitlin said, and I would say even longer. Like, it's just this really, really burdensome and problematic industry, and crypto's come along and is really re-envisioning all of that. And crypto, I mean, Facebook, we don't like to think of this because we love to hate on Facebook, but you know, and I love to hate on Facebook too, and I do it all the time. but you know, just to show the other side of things, if you look at Silicon Valley, so much of the tech that is being used in Silicon Valley was developed by Facebook. They have really smart engineers, software engineers there. They put a lot of their products out open source, and a lot of other companies in Silicon Valley use those open source products. So the research that's being developed at Facebook is highly valued among the top, you know, tech players in Silicon Valley. So, you know, I don't know what they're going to be doing with cryptocurrency. I don't know if it's going to be any good. There's been a lot of criticism at what they've created so far, people saying it's not really crypto, et cetera, et cetera. But they are re-envisioning things. They are innovating on what's in the past. They haven't gotten to perfection yet or anywhere close to it. They have this crazy, very centralized system that isn't going to help anyone with financial autonomy and financial privacy and all the things that we really like crypto for. But they are changing things up, and I think that that's exciting. And the banks don't want things changed up. They had no reason to innovate before. They don't want to be pushed into innovation. They don't want to be pushed into changing things. The government doesn't want to be pushed into changing things. We see this over and over again when they try to shoehorn these new crypto cases into old existing regulation where it just doesn't fit. It's like putting a square peg in a round hole. So, you know, we are going to see things get shaken up. And really, this is the start. The fact that Trump is tweeting about how strong the US dollar is and how it's always going to be supreme and how it's the greatest and how this is never going to change. This should be putting up some red flags for a lot of people there. Why is he selling the US dollar so hard? Like, guys, it's great. We got all the best people. We got all, like, I mean, yeah, the economy is, I think that we've got some tough times ahead, and I think we've got a giant battle against different cryptocurrencies and government.
Well,
so
just like, you know, the military is always preparing for the last war. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that phrase, but it's a pretty common one. The regulators are always regulating for the last crisis and the last problem. And we know they can't keep up with Silicon Valley, much less the cryptocurrency explosion.
Yeah, indeed. I want to mention a couple of super chats that have been sent through the chat. Thank you so much. So Boston sent me a super chat and said, it's just a counter indicator by now. So that is his advice. I do not give investment advice on my channel, but Boston had some encouragement there. Thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it, even though it wasn't dirty fiat, but I still really appreciate it. It's just a joke, but you know, we do like to hate on dirty fiat in this show. And Alexandre, I don't know how to pronounce this. Let me give it a go. Navernuk. Did I get that even close? I'm going to go with. Oh, you cut out. You cut out, Zapoy.
Whatever.
Your pronunciation sounded more like.
I was just going to say.
I
was going to say I didn't think you got it anywhere near right, but I'm not going to try it myself. So.
Way to hate on my anyway, he says, will you mention the Dash news? It is more secure than BTC now, and it looks better than BTC in any sense. No? I'm not sure, like, was that in the news this week? We generally go over like headlines from the week. If there are really interesting developments going on in Dash, send them my way, because I love covering all aspects of the crypto ecosystem. So let me know what you guys would like to see. And thank you so much for the super chat. There's also Beat Back a page that has super chats there. It's looking very lonely at the moment because everything is being revamped on the site at the moment. They're currently integrating it into Float. So that is an exciting thing you guys can keep an eye out for. But if you did want to send cryptocurrency as a donation, I definitely wouldn't turn it away. So yeah, I mean, Caitlin really hit the nail on the head with her responses in this. It seems that Trump is being misled about this, and I think he's not being smart about the reaction, but I can understand where it's coming from. It's coming from a position of fear, of the unknown, of what Facebook is capable of. Let's go on to let's go on to Jerome Powell. So we have the Fed chairman. He spoke out against Libra, and this has been an ongoing thing that's happened. You have all these government officials who are speaking out against Libra. Now you have like the chairman of the Fed who's speaking out against it. He says that it just cannot go forward without there being broad satisfaction with the way that the company has addressed money laundering. So, I mean, this is code for it cannot go forward until the government has had its input and they change, you know, what their cryptocurrency will look like so that it is completely in line with everything that, you know, we have in the traditional financial banking system as well, all of the invasiveness, et cetera, et cetera. He added data protection, consumer privacy, all of these things will need to be addressed very thoroughly and carefully in a deliberate process that will not be a sprint to implementation. Libra raises many serious concerns. He wants real answers, he said. I'm not sure what that means, but the Fed is really coming down on this as well. Everyone is just saying stop. You cannot move forward. Other government officials have said this. You had Maxine Waters leading this charge where they had 4 people writing to Facebook and saying, shut down Libra immediately. So the government, like, I mean, they really don't want this to go ahead. You know, are they really that concerned about money laundering? Because if they were, I mean, gosh, there's so much money laundering going on with the US dollar, and they're looking at Libra coin saying this is so dangerous right here. So, I mean, it's just like really what it is that it's outside of their control, and they don't like something where it would be harder for them to track financial data and all of these things. It's all a control issue. But so what were you going to say, Chris?
Well, I just, criminality or whatever of these non-government coins. I mean, what about the $1 billion worth of coke that was found in a JP Morgan owned boat the other day? I mean, they weren't buying that in JP Morgan coin or in Bitcoin. Pretty sure that was going to be mostly cash, US dollar.
Yeah.
So, it's silly. It's just fear mongering, just like everything else, just like they always do for anything they don't like. It's, think of the children and the criminals and blah, 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 blah. But, if you look at this, you look at, Libra is going, I believe, to be initialized in Switzerland, and the Swiss central bank is, it's cool. We're not that concerned about it. So, they're fine with it, even though the rest of Europe is more like America in that. So it's going to be very interesting. It sounds like they're going to move ahead regardless of what the U.S. government says about it, because the U.S. government can't stop them from starting in Switzerland, at least not officially.
Yeah. And they were saying, like, we don't want this new financial powerhouse going and being based in Switzerland. We want America to reign supreme. I mean, they're coming out and saying this stuff blatantly, which they did in the letter. It's pretty funny. Someone said that you have a green screen malfunction. No, that's actually the color that Zaphoid painted his house. He just really likes it. So now he has a greenhouse, and it's cool, each to their own. Maybe I'll do the same thing here, paint the wall screen. No, I'm using Hangouts now because there are all kinds of issues and things going on. Anyway, Hangouts. that's where we are. It doesn't offer live green screening. So there's your answer there. The other thing I want to mention about Jerome Powell before we move on is he talked about Bitcoin previously in the week, a little bit earlier. And I mean, he's talking about Libra and all his statements about how like the size of Facebook's network means it could be essentially immediately systemically important, which I think is right. But then he starts talking about Bitcoin, and it's kind of like this, almost like this backhanded compliment. He's like, no one uses Bitcoin for payments. They use it more as an alternative to gold. I think he was meaning that as like a jab. But it actually, I mean, it's like, oh, he recognized that Bitcoin is kind of an alternative to gold. I mean, by that, he's saying it's a speculative store of value. Well, yeah, like everything else, like USD is also a speculative store of value. It also has functionality. You can pay for things, but people are also speculating on it constantly, wondering what's going to happen in the future. I mean, what are your thoughts on his comments about like Bitcoin? It's related to gold.
I think people are somewhat going over the top with it. You're right. It kind of is a backhanded compliment, but it was certainly not meant to be. He was trying to make the point that nobody uses it, not that it's as stable as gold, which it isn't. It is interesting when they're talking about it like, and when he has to talk about it this much. I think the simple fact that it is keeping brought up in the chambers of DC is a good thing for Bitcoin. But he says people are using it as a speculative store of value, which most people are. There's a lot of people who don't want to spend Bitcoin because they want to hodl. I have that hat. I do somewhat agree with them. And Powell also said he doesn't think the U.S. should go back to the gold standard. Other people think the U.S. will inevitably have to go back to the gold standard, so we'll see which one's right there. He's really talking about how the same thing everybody else is, where without the freedom to print as much money as they want, and without the freedom to control the currency, the government and the Federal Reserve lose a lot of the power they have, which is, of course, what's been going around and what that Congress critter from California said a few weeks ago.
You just call it a critter?
Yeah, Congress critter. Yeah. That's a thing, right? People say that? I don't know.
I don't know. They do now. I'm going to start using that.
So, at a purely factual level, Bitcoin is a speculative store of value right now. It isn't an awesome medium of exchange. It could not replace the dollar right now with its current technical limitations. Other cryptocurrencies could do better at that, but it is a speculative store of value. He's not wrong. I think people taking it to mean drop gold, buy Bitcoin are going a bit over the top.
Well, I mean, Barry Silbert, he responded and said, like, look how far we've come. The chairman of the Federal Reserve just compared Bitcoin to gold. And I think it's a situation where, someone's like, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this. I mean, I admit it could have this, but I also hate it. And someone's gone like, oh, he said it could have this. Woohoo! And everyone like rejoices in the ecosystem about the one slightly positive thing that they mentioned.
And as I said, I think it's pretty cool that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are being mentioned this often in the various chambers in DC and being forced to broadcast on CNBC and all these other places that talk about it. So I like that. I think that's great. Just don't go overboard with cheering him saying something in particular.
Indeed. Let's go on. I want to talk about some like scammy things and hacking things that have been going on. The first thing I'm going to mention is I do not own the email address naomibrockwelltv@gmail.com. And a bunch of friends have written to me recently saying that this person has reached out to them claiming to be me and trying to lead them to this nefarious website where they're meant to put in like thousands of dollars. All right, don't do that. It's not coming from me. I'm never going to email you guys. I rarely use email. I'm sorry. If you want to get in contact with me, Twitter is super easy and I respond to everything. So just come verify things with me before you do anything. Just want to mention that. But the next scammy things, like there are a lot of scammy things going on that I want to report about this week. So first of all, let's go to South Africa, where apparently protesters set fire to the house of someone who is allegedly involved in a Ponzi scheme. oh my gosh, let's mention this. It was in a place called where is it? It's like Lady something. Where is that? Do you remember the name of the town?
That's an excellent question. I'm
Where
completely
is it?
blanking on it now. Ladysmith Gazette.
Ladysmith, yeah.
Yeah.
So apparently there's this scam, and then the police said, no, we can't investigate it till people officially complain about it. And the protesters were like, right, we know what the next step is. Set the house on fire. It's like, no, I don't think that was the next step that the police were referring to. But what did you read up about this, Chris? It's like this crazy story.
Well, it was interesting. So he called his company Bitcoin Wallet, which is nice and generic. He was promising investors 100% returns. He closed down operations on July 4th and said, I don't have any money. But he took at sometimes, apparently he took like 140,000 US dollars worth of South African Rand in it every day for a while, which is a lot of money. And
I know Chris is gone.
On July 9th, he explained that some investor accounts have been compromised. No, why am I going? I'm
no,
here.
you're back. You're back.
Okay.
It's just kind of, it's just being a little temperamental.
Cool. I'll have to go yell at my ISP after this. But basically, he claims that some people got caught up in phishing scams, so he had no money to pay out. I don't believe that at all, because he was promising 100% returns. That is a freaking Ponzi scheme. That's exactly how that works out. And then there are rumors that he was arrested, and apparently like a bunch of people gathered in front of the police station demanding to see him. And then he wasn't arrested, and the police said they could only act if investors open cases against him, which seems like a reasonable thing for the police to say, right? We if nobody complains to us and files a report, we can't do anything. Sure. So then they burned down his house.
It's just like, I mean, they just went from A to like W, right? They missed a few steps in there. Guys, if you're involved in a Ponzi scheme, that's really, really bad. And there are probably better ways to go about dealing with that than setting fire to someone's house. I don't want to see a world where everyone is just like, I got wronged, burn everything. That's kind of like Game of Thrones territory right there.
Yeah. And then, so after the house burned down, the police then apparently uploaded a new affidavit, said, hey, if you lost money, please fill out this form and complain to it with this information so we can arrest him instead of burning stuff down. So I don't quite get the order of operations the protesters went to here. I mean, typically from my understanding, you file the police report, get pissed off that the police can't do anything, and then burn the house down. Don't just jump straight to the end because you happen to have some extra Molotov cocktails lying around.
Some people in the chat are bringing up a good point that, if you're trying to get some action, if you're trying to see some results and you have been wronged, maybe this is a reflection of how well the court system works there. I'm not sure. I don't know too much about it. But if you have people jumping to extreme measures, taking everything into their own hands right off the bat, maybe they just have very little faith in the normal channels that people should go to. I mean, you see that happening in lots of different places. As I said, I don't know too much about the court system there or anything, but it is interesting that they kind of jumped straight in. They were like, seize control.
Oh, I know there's a lot of bad stuff happening in South Africa unrelated to this, like they're seizing white people's farms, they're stacking the courts. There's a lot of general unrest, so it could just be people assume that nobody in the police force will help them, so they just jump to burning people's houses down.
Or maybe they're just crazy and like burning things. Maybe they're a Targaryen or something like that.
Yeah, and it's important to realize a lot of stuff is happening in Africa right now. I mean, in South Africa and Zimbabwe, there are high Bitcoin premiums like there were during the spike, because there's a lot of inflation in both places right now. Like there's a Luno is a South African exchange. They had $1,000 premium on Bitcoin a few days ago.
Wow, that's like when I went to South Korea, they talk about the Kimchi premium, which I think is like the most adorable name ever, the Kimchi premium. And I was like, what is the Kimchi premium? And it's because the regulations there are so tight. It's really hard to change money in and out to get into, to buy into Bitcoin. And so there's a huge premium there as well. And it's called the Kimchi premium, where you just have dramatic spikes, like $1,000 more than you would pay elsewhere. So, I mean, it is a reflection, like even when regulations are tight, even when things like government tries to make it difficult, banks try to make it difficult, it just goes to show like Bitcoin is completely dictated by supply and demand, right? The price is completely determined by that. It's not pegged in any way. It's not upheld by government that has all these resources and can print money out of thin air. And so the fact that even when governments and banks try to make it hard, people just go after it even harder, and it increases the value of it, could be a reflection of what may be to come if the government comes down hard on Bitcoin. If someone like Ben Sherman gets his way and they ban Bitcoin, or what if they decide to ban Libra in certain countries, maybe that will just increase the premium on these things.
Well, I mean, South Africa banned Bitcoin last year. There's new capital controls in South Africa. Zimbabwe banned trading in foreign currencies because everybody was using the US dollar and they didn't like that. So they are forcing people to exchange the US dollar for the Zimbabwe, whatever they call their currency, I guess the dollar as well. So, there's a lot going on in these countries as they are suffering from currency issues and they're trying to control it. So, yeah, I mean, people in these countries are desperate for investments that will protect them from their own failing currencies. So
I just snapped my pen. Sorry.
Oh no pen. So it makes sense that people in South Africa would be more likely to fall for these sorts of scams. It just goes to show you, when the government makes it harder to do stuff, then the honest people who will treat you fairly, they're less likely to do it because they don't want to get arrested. They don't want to deal with that. So that lets the scammers and the underhanded people kind of run rampant. Yeah. And that's what we see in these places.
Indeed. I just want to say, Chris, so Trav and Keith says hi. Just thought I'd let you know. I didn't
hi,
say
Trav. Good to have you here.
Yeah, I didn't say hi to me or anything. It's totally fine. But he says hi to you. So just
what are you, chopped liver?
Excuse me. All right. So just moving along. Just wanted to mention that, and I'm not even jealous or anything. Let's move on to the next kind of like security related, hacky related thing. So Trezor, apparently people have done tests, and there was this report put out on Medium where it's alleged that if someone has physical possession of your Trezor, it costs like $100 to get a device that will give away your access key to the device. So that's a little scary, but it's also not completely out of line with what people presumed. Hardware devices need to be kept really safe. But do you want to go over the details of these tests that they went through, Chris, and explain to people a little more about what happened?
Well, the short of it is that Ledger is saying that there are certain vulnerabilities in Trezor and KeepKey that will allow anybody who has physical
you're cutting out. You're cutting out. Say it again.
To gain access. I'm cutting out again? Wow, yeah. This is really bad today. Usually it's really good. Any rate, Trezor, Trezor was saying that basically if somebody gets physical access, Ledger was saying if somebody gets physical access to your Trezor or to your KeepKey, that they'd be able to recover your PIN and thus get access to your crypto. I'm not sure how practical their various hacks were there, but from my perspective, if you lose physical access to a device with your cryptocurrency on it, use your backup methods immediately to get it off of there, because just like if your computer, if somebody has physical access to your drive, chances are they have physical access to your data. If somebody has physical access to your hardware wallet, somebody probably has access to your coins. Hardware wallets are much better for securing your crypto against remote access. So if your computer is compromised, chances are they wouldn't be able to get access to your crypto just by plugging your KeepKey or your Ledger, your Trezor in there. Keep in mind that even Kaspersky a few months ago, posted about how they could get access to a Ledger and a Trezor and a KeepKey if they had physical access to it. So I wouldn't trust any of these hardware wallets to secure your cryptocurrency from physical access, but it does a damn good job of securing your crypto from a vulnerable computer or from your computer that's online.
Absolutely.
So,
And I think people need to remember that about hardware devices, about paper wallets, all these kinds of things. As you said, Chris, the point is to protect people from getting access online, because there are a lot more people who could get access online than physically. Physically, they'd have to know exactly where your device is, etc. But I actually did a really interesting episode with someone called Jack Hyde recently, and she's a spy, and it was the coolest thing ever to chat with her. So my dream job when I was younger, I used to watch Alias with Jennifer Garner, where she'd like dress up on all these wigs and speak all these different languages. I think that's why I learned so many languages, because I was like, this will come in really handy if I'm a spy one day. And I really enjoy like dressing up and all this. But like her job is literally to physically infiltrate buildings. She gets hired by companies to break into places and
so she's a red team.
Exactly. So let them know where their weaknesses are. And I think that's like the coolest thing. But some of the tips she was giving, it scared me crazy, because a lot of people, like, they'll go online and they'll be like, yeah, I have my hardware device, I just hide it in my apartment. And it's like, what are you even doing? Like that, I always let people know, like, if you're storing things in your apartment, you better make sure that your apartment has amazing security. Because this Jack Hyde, the woman that I was interviewing, she talks about all these super easy tools that people use to break into apartments, all the really easy ways that people will track down your address. Like, this is not good OBSEC, guys. You need to like make sure that you're storing at a place that has really good security. You need to make sure you're not talking about this stuff online. You need to like just be really careful out there, because this report just kind of drives home the fact that physical security is so important. It's not just digital security. It's not just, I'm protecting it, I've got a hardware device, that's all great. You have to realize that, one, these devices can be compromised. Two, these devices can be stolen. And it seems that it's easy to extract your crypto if that happens. So make sure that you're being really careful with the physical location of your devices, etc. It's so important.
Yeah, and the defense on the Trezor and KeepKey from this particular attack is to basically use a password on your seed phrase. Because what these attacks do is they allow the recovery of your 12 or 24 word seed phrase from the devices. But if you have a password on that, then they can't recover that, and they won't necessarily even know they haven't recovered all your crypto. It's a good practice in general, even though it makes it a lot harder. So just have a good 32 character password on top of your 24 word seed phrase, because everybody will have such an easy time doing that.
Yeah, and so in this report, it is important to take this with a grain of salt. So apparently the report, is it true, it was like released by the Ledger team? Is that
who? And this isn't the first time this year they've released something like this.
Right.
So they're working very hard to criticize their competition.
Yeah, that's very clear. I mean, that being said, somebody should be mentioning this stuff, because I think it's important for people to realize. Quite often, I mean, I had this great interview with Peter Todd about this. Maybe I'll release it one day. I got a lot backlog of videos there, but he talks about how there are vulnerabilities in hardware devices, but the biggest issue is that people hear the word hardware device and people are like, oh, what's the safest way to store your crypto? And everyone just jumps on the bandwagon of hardware device, as if that's all you need to do, as if that's like the be all and end all. And you got to realize that a lot of this rhetoric is actually started by the hardware device companies themselves, who just really want to, it's amazing branding where they're like, yes, we offer the best way to store your crypto, and everyone jumps on with that, and jumps on the like, oh, exchange is bad, but hardware devices, they're 100% perfect. And I think we need to realize that there are vulnerabilities in everything. When you have these reports coming out saying, oh, hardware devices are great, take it with a grain of salt, because it's obviously great marketing for the companies. They're probably behind a lot of this. That being said, hardware devices are probably the safest way to store your crypto, but you still need to be careful. There are still measures you need to take. It's not a be all and end all. Physical contact is a huge attack vector there, so make sure that you're aware of that. And in this article, I think Ledger put it out, and what did they say? If they're putting it out and saying, hey, Trez has a vulnerability, what about Ledger? Did they do the same tests on Ledger? Can we trust their results if they did? I mean, I'd be interested to know. Chris, you mentioned something before about that.
They claim that they're not vulnerable to this particular one. Whether or not they really are, it's kind of hard to say. They claim there's some weaknesses in just BIP39 and how it only does 2048 iterations instead of the NIST suggestion of 10,000 and so on and so forth. But basically, they're claiming that if somebody gets access to your device using about $100 piece of equipment, they can pull out your 24-word seed phrase, and it's basically considered to be public at that time, which I wouldn't necessarily disagree with. So just be careful with your devices. Don't let anybody else except your next of kin know where it's being stored. Try to use a variety of protections. Most of my, I'm not even going to go there. There's multiple ways you can store crypto.
Most of my crypto.
No, I do not rely. I personally do not rely on hardware storage for my crypto. I rely on other methods to securely store my crypto. Very good. Different levels. So you have the crypto in your phone that you use to walk around, and you realize that if you lose your phone, somebody's going to get crypto. Then you have your, like your checking account, which is your hardware wallet at home, and you realize that unless somebody gets physical access to it, it's probably pretty safe. And then you have your cold storage on a piece of metal somewhere or spread around in various different locations or whatnot, some form of paper wallet that's hopefully not an actual paper, so it's easier to save, that nobody will be able to get access to without actually finding all those words. And that's your cold storage. So you want to personally keep this in mind as you go through your crypto storage methods. And realize that if you only have $100 worth, spending $20,000 in a secure method to store your cryptocurrency is probably not worth it. But when you start getting real money into it, then think harder about this. And anytime you're doing the storage, you kind of have to think, all right, if a bus hits me, how's my next of kin going to get access to this crypto? Are they going to know what to do? So you always have to think through those processes too.
Are you going to be like Quadriga, where your crypto dies with you?
Yep.
Apparently.
And you have to worry about what Ledger calls the evil maid attack. So, if somebody's cleaning your house and just grabs the device or grabs your backup or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of ways that stuff can happen. And, talking to a hacker, talking to somebody who actively looks for vulnerabilities and participates in red team scenarios for companies is a useful way to realize how horrible we all are if somebody really wants to get access to our stuff.
Absolutely. Be really careful out there, guys. And everyone laughs at this suggestion that, maybe storing your stuff in bank vaults is interesting, or storing part of your stuff in different bank vaults, but making sure there's redundancy there in case certain banks get closed. I mean, it's like nothing about crypto seems convenient right now, because if you're being your own security, it's really hard to have good security. But that's the trade-off. We do this. We want financial autonomy. We need to protect ourselves. Otherwise, the financial autonomy doesn't mean anything if someone could just steal our money.
And you realize that, this is what the banking system does for us. And I think a lot of people early in crypto really didn't think all that through, or at least they didn't realize that what they considered not important, people in the real world considered important. So it's just part of the process of crypto growing up to think about these problems and find ways to handle them for the average user. And it's just going to be an ongoing process of financial independence from the banking systems that are choking us.
Yeah, and we're getting there. I mean, there are some great products out there now. The ecosystem has evolved so much in the last few years. Huge amount of resources being put into making things easier for people. It's really exciting to see some of the things being developed. So don't lose heart. It is inconvenient, but there are new things being created every day. Just keep an eye out for cool tools. I want to give a shout out to JR, Exciting World of Cryptos. Visit his YouTube channel if you haven't. I always like to give a shout out to JR's YouTube channel because it's always so pretty, because he always has great backgrounds there. Not like I got a guitar. It's kind of pretty. But he says, privacy and security is the marshmallows and gravy of the entire concern to life of anyone online. Always important to keep one's head above the sea. Wise words there, JR. Could not agree more. Also, marshmallows and gravy. I don't even understand. Is that like a Canadian expression? It's the
marshmallows and gravy. Now, when I was on my camping trip last week, I've never heard of marshmallows and gravy. That's weird. Now, when I was on my camping trip last weekend, I had marshmallows with saltines, Nutella, and peanut butter as sort of a weird s'more. but never marshmallows and gravy.
It's pretty interesting combination there. But they're both kind of decadent things. Like marshmallows go on top of things to garnish, and gravy does. So maybe it's like it's the I don't know. I get the essence of the phrase. I've never heard it before, but I do like it.
I could think of a good, a marshmallow gravy to pour over something. Yams, sweet potatoes, sure, why not?
Yeah. So apparently, people are saying that that Bitbacker, there's something going on. As I said, yeah, I'm not sure when it's going to be fixed, but they are actively working on it right now. I was actually chatting to the CEO and the developer this morning. So exciting things being rolled out there. So I'm sorry if that means that at the moment things are halted. I didn't realize that it meant you couldn't access the Power Chat page. So yeah, keep an eye on that, and I'll keep you updated on when those things get cleared up for sure. And if you guys wanted to send me screenshots on Twitter, then I can check those out as well, or send them to the Bitbacker support on Twitter. That's always helpful there. Let's move on, because we've only got a little bit of time left, and I want to run through some other important things. One thing that I'm going to be going on into in a little more detail in a later show is that there's a company called Fortress that are reaching out to creditors, people who have claims on money that was lost in MTgox, and they're saying that they will buy those claims for $900 per Bitcoin, which is substantially larger than the amount that it was pegged to before, when the Japanese court said that they'd be paying people back some of their money. They said, well, Bitcoin was worth X amount. It was like $400 something at the time of the collapse.
451.
451, and so we will pay you back 451 per Bitcoin. And everyone was kind of up in arms about this. They were like, what? It's worth like thousands and thousands of dollars now. So things have shifted a little bit in this court case. I'm going to be updating people on what's happened. But now it seems that there is a small chance that people could be getting back more money than that. And maybe they could be getting back just a percentage of Bitcoin, etc. And so we're not quite sure what's going to happen. And now this company, Fortress, is reaching out to people saying that they're going to buy it for $900 per Bitcoin, which is substantially larger than the amount that they would have been paid by the courts, and substantially less than the price of Bitcoin right now. So it's an interesting balance there. But careful, if you are getting letters like this, there are so many scams in the space. Just make sure that you're not sending anyone money, that there's no chargeback possibilities. Like, just make sure that it's legitimate. This company is reaching out to people, so I know that it is happening, but just make sure that they are the people reaching out to you if you get letters like this.
And that's an interesting way to do it. I mean, if you are holding these Bitcoin stakes, you really have no idea when or even if you're going to get anything out of it. So Fortress is saying, hey, we'll take on that risk for you and pay you twice as much as you might get.
Yeah.
So, I understand why they're doing it, and I understand why people are like, come on, it's worth a whole bunch more than that now. But, something's better than nothing.
Indeed. So I just got a super chat from Trevin Keith. Maybe he's feeling bad because he didn't say hi to me before. It's totally fine, Trevin. You're all forgiven for that. I don't bear any.
And I think it's actually Traven. Just
is it?
Yes.
I could just pass it off as my accent. No, that's just how Australians pronounce Trevin. Traven Keith, thank you so much. He says, thank you for the great stream and letting me have a part. Thank you for being here, Traven. Thank you to everyone who's writing comments. I don't want this to seem like a wrap up, because we've got a couple more stories to cover, but just huge thank you to everyone who's sending super chats, everyone who's here chatting in the chat. It's just great having you guys around. All the people who've liked the videos as well. 2 people have disliked it. If you're still hanging around in the chat with us. Let me know why you disliked it. Let me heckle you back, because I can't currently, because I don't know who you are.
It was probably your Trump impression.
It was probably my Trump. No. Yeah, all right. Maybe my fluffy hair. People are saying it's like really fluffy today or whatever. That's why. Yeah, they just liked it for those superficial reasons. Nothing to do with the stream. Anyway, let's move on. So another thing I want to just mention, Tron had a little bit of controversy. They had this office in Beijing. It was apparently raided. There were protesters who broke in. The story behind this is that there was this Ponzi scheme set up that took advantage of the Chinese characters. So however however you write Tron in Chinese, they used a name that looked very, very similar. So they were tricking people into thinking that this was actually Tron doing this. It ended up being this big Ponzi scheme. People got angry at Tron because they were duped. So they went to the Tron officers saying, like, you duped me out of my money. Tron's like, no, we didn't have anything to do with this. Really, really sorry this happened. There was like a police raid. There's like videos. If you haven't checked this out, I put a link in my video description, but there are videos of like police arriving there. And then Justin Sun actually responded and said that so Wavefield community protesters, they disrupted morning operations. It resulted in police presence, continues sympathy for those defrauded, and apparently Tron's working with the police to try and get to the bottom of this. Chris, do you have anything you wanted to add to that before we move on? Chris is gone.
There's a lot of interest in this. I don't really know all the details of why they were able to come on. I'm still here. But can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. You're good.
Okay. Anyway, it's so interesting. Like, I have no idea how long this Ponzi scheme has been ongoing, but like 145 million USD that they managed to scam. Like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a shocking amount, actually. And I know, I feel sorry for all the people who were scammed, but it shows there's still an awful lot of interest in the crypto space.
Yep, it absolutely is. Tron, I'm just going to go to his response. He says that Tron officials express sympathy. However, the company strongly condemns acts of violence that may be perpetrated as a result of events that are not in its direct control. So this is a response to protesters breaking into their Beijing building. You know, it kind of goes back to the people in South Africa who were like, it's a Ponzi scheme, burn it down. Like here, people are like, we were defrauded, let's break into the offices. Yes. It seems that like Justin seems to be suggesting it got a bit violent there. Like this, this is a bad way to go, especially because I mean, Tron is a great example of this. With the Ponzi scheme, it seems that this guy was related to this Ponzi scheme. They lost money, they're angry, they found the perpetrator. But you can never really be sure that this is the perpetrator, right? Like, do you really want to commit acts of violence and then find out, oops, I was wrong, which is exactly the case in the Tron one, where they're like, Tron, you stole our money. And it turns out that they had nothing to do with it. It was a scammer. So you've gone and hurt someone's office building, and caused a lot of havoc there, and they had nothing to do with it. So just be careful there. Don't be so quick to burn things down.
Yeah, I mean, apparently somebody claims to have committed suicide over this. And, I mean, 145 million since January of this year. I mean, that's a lot of money to have pulled in the last 6 months that apparently people thought they were putting in Tron or something. So it's interesting. It's very interesting how many of these schemes are catching on because people just really want to get ahead of the next big bull run. And apparently these people promising huge returns if I want to pull a Trump, and just ripping off a lot of money.
Yeah, and people who want to know more about how the scheme works. So apparently, as I said, they took advantage of the name similarity. It's the Wavefield super community, is what it's called. The victims were promised high rates of return on their investment in the name of Tron, BitTorrent, and uTorrent. And Tron apparently spoke out about this many times. They condemned it. They warned people about this scam going on, but a lot of people apparently didn't get the message. Huge amounts of money were taken. And just be really careful. Again, I said that there's some scam going around. People are using my name and saying like, oh, just send $1,000 to this really legitimate site here. And the site looks really good, to be honest. And as I said, I'm going to give you guys more information. I've been tweeting about it frantically, posting my Telegram group saying like, don't give any money, it's not me. Just be really careful out there, because these, like, the whole point of a scam, you're not going to go to their website and it's going to say scam site in big neon letters. It's gonna, like, these people do this for a living. They're really good at it. It's gonna look legitimate. It's gonna make you feel comfortable and at ease. And your communications with people, when you're like, is that really Naomi? They're gonna make you feel at ease. They're gonna tell you whatever you need to hear so that you trust them. So just be really careful out there and making sure you go above and beyond to verify things.
And just be aware that this is, I mean, people have probably been thinking about a lot of these scams for the entirety of the bear market, just waiting for Bitcoin to show show some signs of recovery to unleash these. I mean, if you're in any Telegram groups or any Discord groups, you have seen the uptick in scam DMs and scam posts and whatnot over the last few months. Where you've seen this constantly. So just be aware that people want to take your money. Don't be in a rush to send your money to anybody. Always do as much due diligence as you can, and then try to do a little bit more, because those people, they think they know what your limit is. They think they know that you're just going to look quickly. You're going to feel in a rush to get in ahead of everybody else, and you're going to send your money over, and then it's going to disappear. So just have somebody else look at it. Double check with people. Do whatever you can to protect yourself, because you are in the crypto space, as we've said a billion times before. You are your own bank. There is nobody who can swoop in to rescue you if you mess up. So treat your money, treat your computer, treat all of this as if you were giving people access to your bank account. Treat it very, very carefully.
Absolutely. A couple more things that I just want to mention in passing before we finish off. So Bitpoint exchange was hacked for $32 million in cryptocurrency. This is an exchange based in Japan. Again, it's a lot of money. Apparently there was like an irregular withdrawal from its hot wallet. This happened yesterday, and it's not clear which assets were lost at this stage, but the exchange offered a bunch of different assets. They had XRP, Litecoin, Ether, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin. So we'll get more information about that and keep you updated. And then the other one I wanted to mention was there's a Polish crypto exchange, Bitmarket, that suddenly shut down. And it was like Poland's second largest crypto exchange. So these are people that have a lot of prominence, and then they just shut down. They said, due to loss of liquidity, we're forced to cease operations. We'll let you know about further steps. So this is, this is strange. Apparently there were red flags leading up to this. Apparently people were forced to change their passwords, etc. Maybe they were hacked. They haven't responded to confirm this yet, but yeah, it's a lot of warning signs, targets put on places. I didn't have this as one of the things I wanted to cover, but I will mention in passing that Facebook is looking into creating an insurance company, because with all these giant target signs on these exchanges, it makes sense that people want to protect themselves. Places like Kraken, Binance, they just set aside coins so that in the case of an emergency or funds being taken, they have funds to cover their users' funds. Binance calls it the Seifu Fund, which I think is great. But a lot of exchanges do this, but now Coinbase wants to create an actual insurance company. There is very little insurance options for people in the crypto space, which is why people like Kraken and Binance are doing it themselves, which is great. It's really responsible for them to be taking precautions like that. So we'll have to see what happens there. Real Health News says, I see a guitar. Naomi is going to play a song today. Listen, I've been posting on Steam at open mic night, guys. If you want to see songs, they're not posted on this channel. They're posted on another channel that has like 2 subscribers. So if you want to see the music, you'll see it there. You probably won't see it here. The other thing, so everything's still going with Bitfinex. I just wanted to mention that. Last show, we talked about how New York Attorney General, why are they going after Bitfinex when Bitfinex didn't actually serve New York customers? But now New York Attorney General is saying they do serve customers in New York, and it went on longer than than we thought before, and that's why we're going after them. I'll keep following. I'll probably do a whole episode on the Bitfinex thing just to explain what's happened in the past and what's going to happen. I don't want to dwell on it here. The final thing that I want to mention in the show, because we've run out of time, it's just like a kind of fun special interest story. Miami Dolphins now have an official crypto, and it's Litecoin. Chris, what are your thoughts on this?
Adoption, I guess. Good for them.
I
mean, depending on how much they push this might be the first time a lot of the NFL fans will see any sort of cryptocurrency. So, or be aware of any other crypto other than Bitcoin. So cool.
Yeah,
but it's the Dolphins. So,
That was a little bit of a slap there. Yeah, I mean, I think that that's great exposure. Any stuff that kind of sheds light on cool crypto things going on is going to be great for the space. So well done, Litecoin Foundation, on that coup. Apparently, Miami Dolphins will be accepting multiple currencies, but Litecoin is like they've partnered with them, and that's going to be their major one. So that gets kicked off September 5, which is the start of the 2019 NFL season. And I know that because I'm such an avid sports fan, and not because I just read it in an article. Go sports team. This is football, right? Or rugby, or whatever you crazy Americans have. Football. Yeah. All right.
Yes.
So
rugby, but with ads and worse hits.
So Charlie Lee responded about the partnership. They said, this collaboration propels Litecoin in front of an audience of millions of people around the world at a time where adoption of cryptocurrencies continues to gain momentum, and the ecosystem is able to support real-world use cases in ways previously not possible. We see this as a powerful way to raise awareness and educate people about Litecoin and cryptocurrencies on a tremendous scale. I mean, it goes back to what Jerome Powell was saying, where it's like, no one uses Bitcoin in transactions. But then you have Litecoin, which is kind of very similar to Bitcoin, that is being used. You have like Smartcash that is being used. You have Bitcoin Cash, which is being used. You have Dash, which is being used. Like, when Jerome Powell kind of gives this slap and says Bitcoin, you know, and a lot of people take that to mean cryptocurrencies in general are not being used. It's just not true. There's this thriving world of all kinds of currencies that are being used, and different cultures associated with each coin, which is very interesting to see that develop. But I like, just to sum up, I'm very excited to see.
Just as a note, like with all things like this, I haven't seen anything from the Dolphins. I've just seen stuff from Litecoin, and apparently the only time that they're going to accept it will be for their 50-50 raffle, for people at the stadium during game time.
Okay.
So it's apparently, but again, I haven't seen this from the Dolphins. I've just seen this from Litecoin, and we have seen from various coins in the past where they will announce partnerships, and the institution they're supposedly partnering with says, "Who are you?" So I'd like to see something from the Dolphins before I accept this as actual fact.
Well, I mean, if they're using this for the raffle, like, I understand your grain of salt. I don't know. I don't want to raid on their parade. It seems like a really cool thing that they've set up. The fact that they've gotten the Miami Dolphins to even talk to them about cryptocurrency is kind of cool. So I'm pretty excited with what's happening, and I'm excited to watch this war. The war on cryptocurrency play out. I know that sounds kind of like sadistic of me, like I want to watch them fight, but you really do have these centralized banking systems, and the Federal Reserve and the government officials, and then you have these different crypto projects, and in particular Libra, that is going to be at the front of this battle. I'm interested to see what happens, and we're going to keep you updated on all the things that go on in that as we get new information. I think it's going to be the most interesting thing to play out in Bitcoin, to watch it play out, because this could really shape the future of cryptocurrency. America dictates a lot of what happens in the world. You know, they do that because of the supremacy of the US dollar. So they have a lot of power to make decisions and dictate how crypto is going to be treated in a regulatory sense. So we'll have to see what happens there. And as I said, I'll keep all of you posted as I find out more information, but I'm pretty interested to watch it. What about you, Chris?
I'm thrilled to watch it. It'll be pretty awesome, because it will shape how things go in the future, but it'll be really awesome to see free market money working regardless of what the various governments try to do to stop it.
Indeed. Well, just wanted to give another shout out to everyone in the chat. You guys are so awesome. I love spending my Friday afternoons with you as we go over all the crypto news. It's pretty fun just watching this. No, I'm not breaking out into a song. I told you guys, you have to go give my other channel more views, the one that I've hidden away from all my subscribers. I would do more music on here, but I feel like people would just unsubscribe. If they want music, then they have to go to the place where they expect music. Or I'll like whip it out and be like, Donald Trump, he does not Bitcoin. Maybe I'll write that song. I don't know. You guys have kind of got me excited now. So stay tuned for my new Donald Trump Bitcoin song coming soon to this channel. But seriously, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much to all the people who sent through super chats today. We have, let me just scroll up here, Boston. Thank you to all of Boston for sending me that. I use that joke every time. I still find it funny. Alexandre Naverniuk, which is definitely how you pronounce it. Thank you so much for that. We have, scrolling down, Crypto Angels. Oh my God, I totally missed this. I didn't read out this one from Crypto Angels. I'm sure JP Morgan paid for the 20 tons of cocaine with Bitcoin.
Well, that's what I was saying earlier about, they had these 20 tons, it wasn't 20 tons, but however much of cocaine. I'm sure they weren't paying for it in cryptocurrency or even JP Morgan coin. I'm sure it was cold, hard cash.
Yeah, well, sorry I missed that, Crypto Angels. I'm glad that I scrolled through so that I could let people know about that. I'm sure that they paid for it in crypto, not. JR, huge thank you to you for sending through your power chat. And Traven, see what I did there with pronunciation?
There you go.
Thank you so much as well. Thank you for eventually saying hi to me. I appreciated that. Chris was getting all of the love on the show. So I just, my jealousy just came in. I was like, got to stop that. You guys are awesome. Have a wonderful weekend. Chris, as always, thank you for being on the show. You are wonderful, and I'm delighted to always have you here. Go enjoy your Friday, guys. Go enjoy your weekend and have some fun. Let me know what you get up to.
Thanks for having me. It was fun chatting with everyone.
Absolutely. Bye. Love you all.
Sayonara.
Sayonara. And I'm stopping it now. I just wanted this awkward moment at the end where I'm doing a delivery. All right, we're going. Bye. I love you all.